Our boy Jeff Passan has dropped some golden little tidbits in his offseason preview. Let's go talk about it. And of course, Jeff Passan has to start with Juan Soto, the top free agent on this year's market, one of the top free agents of all time, and for good reason. He's a generational type of player, just coming off a career year where he hit 288 with a 419 on base, a 569 slugging, a 180 WRC plus, 41 homers, and 8.1 Fangraph wins above replacement. Only 26 years old. Juan Soto is absolutely a generational type of player. Now, the first thing that he digs into is the Blue Jays have the first scheduled meeting. He says here that the Blue Jays will be first, according to Major League sources. After trying to land Shohei Ohtani last winter, the Blue Jays are serious about adding a star alongside Vlad Jr. and have targeted Soto. Now, he would be a great fit with the Toronto Blue Jays, a seamless fit because they could use someone in the outfield. As of right now, their outfield consists of George Springer, Dalton Varsho, and Nathan Lukes. I would imagine Soto would slide right into the left field, but that would give Vlad some much needed protection. It's not like Vlad really needed the protection this year. He had a great year, but yeah, they need to add someone to this lineup. And could you imagine Soto right there in the middle of the lineup? I mean, my goodness, that would be ridiculous. Another team that he mentions here is my Red Sox. He says here, another team with Soto at the top of its want list, Boston. The Red Sox also have a meeting on the books with Soto this week. Now, my first reaction to this was the Red Sox are just trying to drive up the price for the Yankees to keep him from going back there, keep him away from the Blue Jays, get him out of the American League East, just have him go to the Mets. And also with the Red Sox, they haven't been spending the big bucks in the last couple of years. Now, maybe I'm dreaming here. Maybe they've been saving the money for this moment. I don't know. But historically, the Red Sox haven't given out massive contracts like this in free agency. Sure, they did with Manny Ramirez in 2001 before John Henry went there. They did it with Carl Crawford before 2011. They did it with David Price in 2016. But the idea or the thinking of them giving a massive deal like this to Juan Soto in free agency, it just doesn't sound right in my opinion. I just don't see the Red Sox doing this. But if they did bring him in, if you had a lineup with Rafi Devers and Juan Soto, along with some other guys here like Jarren Duran and Tristan Casas, Trevor Story, man, oh man, what a lineup that would be. But I think most of us would agree the favorites are the Yankees and the Mets. And he goes on to say this here, the two favorites in the Soto Derby, the Mets and the Yankees, also have meetings scheduled according to sources. Aaron Boone confirmed theirs. The Mets' pursuit has gotten a hand from shortstop Francisco Lindor, who would love another star in Queens and has taken a role in recruiting Soto, while the Yankees can point to Soto's excellence in the Bronx this season as a precursor for more. Now, obviously, the Yankees would love to keep him around, keep together the modern-day Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris with Aaron Judge. Absolutely, the Yankees need to do what it takes to keep Soto in pinstripes for the rest of his career. The only thing I wonder about with the Yankees is, are they going to go that extra mile than, say, a team like the Mets, who, with Steve Cohen, I would imagine he's going to do everything it takes to land Juan Soto in Queens. Now, the Yankees, they already got a lot of contracts on this payroll. You got Aaron Judge, you got Giancarlo Stanton, you got Carlos Rodon. There's a lot of beef right there. Now, the Yankees, yes, they have a lot of money, but are they going to go to the point of doing what it takes to land Soto? We'll just have to wait and see. Now, the Yankees, sure, they have other needs here, something like third base. I think they need to address this offseason, but I think for the Yankees, you need to do what it takes to keep Soto. But for the Mets, I mean, obviously, the fit is very clear, the need is very clear, and they had a lot of money just come off the books. Juan Soto just makes so much sense for them, and Francisco Lindor, having him in the fold, trying to recruit Juan Soto, I think is huge. They clearly need an upgrade here. Soto would be absolutely massive. I do think it's going to come down to the Mets and the Yankees. I talked about my Red Sox just a second ago and the Blue Jays. I just wonder how far those two teams are willing to go. Honestly, if I were to pick a team right now, I would have to lean towards the Mets. I know the pinstripes, they weigh heavy in the Bronx, but the Mets, when it comes to the motivation, when it comes to, the need of having him in the lineup, along with the financial flexibility that they have, they're already way under the CBT, and they have a lot more money to just go out there and just spend a ton. on, I think the Mets have the advantage as of right now. But of course, there are other bats out there as well, and he talks about Willy Adames. Now, Adames is coming off a solid season with the Brewers, hit 251, a 331 on base, a 462 slugging, a 119 WRC plus, 32 homers, a 4.8 Fangraph wins above replacement overall. Now, the defense did take a bit of a step back this year. However, he has a good track record of defense, so I'm not really worried about that. But Passan mentions here the willingness to move to another position. He goes on to say here, though he makes all kind of sense for the San Francisco Giants, Adames' willingness to play third base ties him to the Mets and Yankees too. The Dodgers will be in the mix as well. Now, I think the Giants would be a great fit, but I guess there are some reports recently that they are looking to maybe slash a little bit of payroll. So are they going to be willing to spend some money for Willy Adames? I think he would be a good option for them, just a stable option they can have for the next several years. And the Dodgers, I just mentioned them. I think they would be a great fit, but again, like I just mentioned, after committing over $1 billion last offseason, are they going to be willing to pay Adames, who's probably going to get something around $200 million, to be completely honest, but he would be a great fit there. I know they have Alex Freeland coming up the pipe. He mentions the Mets and the Yankees. I think the Mets could be interesting here, especially if they don't land Juan Soto. Brett Baty hasn't really showed all that much at the major league level, a high-level prospect not too long ago, but with Brett Baty, could they give him another chance? Sure. Or could they sign Adames to play third, and then maybe Baty can get some time in the outfield? That has been discussed. And I think the Yankees make some sense as well. I just mentioned earlier when talking about Juan Soto, they need to address third base. You have a couple of younger options in Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza. Could one of those guys grab the job by the horns? But if the Yankees want to go with a stable player, I think Willy Adames would be a great option for them. Nonetheless, Adames is absolutely going to get himself a nice payday this offseason. Up next, he talks about Alex Bregman. He goes on to say here, Bregman remaining a lifetime Houston Astro alongside Jose Altuve is a real possibility, particularly with the Astros concerned about ponying up for outfielder Kyle Tucker, who hits free agency after next season and is looking at a $300 million plus deal. Now, Kyle Tucker, I've been wondering why they haven't, given the extension for him, and I guess this is why, because he's looking to really cash in free agency. Now, with Alex Bregman, he's not going to be getting $300 plus million, but he should get over $200 million, and I've been wondering if the Astros even want to dabble in that. They usually don't get involved in big free agent contracts. Sure, they gave the contract for Josh Hader, Jose Abreu. That turned out to be a miserable contract, but something to the level of Alex Bregman, over $200 million, they haven't really done that. Now, sure, they've done the extensions like Jose Altuve along with Yordan Alvarez, but are they going to put forward a $200 million plus offer for Alex Bregman? Even with a hometown discount, what is that contract going to look like? I'm not quite sure, but he goes on to mention here, if not the Astros, Bregman would be an excellent fit in Detroit, where he could reunite with former manager AJ Hinch, as well as Toronto, should it fall short on Soto. Now, I think the Tigers would be a great fit. Jace Young, he had the opportunity last year, didn't fully grab the job by the horns. There are some issues defensively with him as well. Alex Bregman would be a very stable third baseman for years to come, and then perhaps they could use Jace Young as a trade chip. And I also think the Blue Jays would be a great fit as well. We talked about them earlier with Juan Soto. Now, when it comes to the infield, I think Will Wagner is pretty set at second base at this point. For third base, you got Ernie Clement. I think Ernie Clement could be more of a utility player for you. And actually, if you look at the expected home runs when it comes to Bregman, this year he had 26, but in Toronto, he would have had 29. They got a bit of a closer left field corner there, so I think Bregman, where he tends to pull, I think that would be a great fit. And I'll also mention the Mets and the Yankees as well. We talked earlier with Willy Adames, right? You got Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza as possibilities for third base for the Yankees, but if they want a stable option, I could definitely see this as well. And of course, like I mentioned, Brett Baty, how are they feeling about Brett Baty moving forward? But I definitely think Alex Bregman, if I were to be a guessing man, if I were to throw down a bet on the table, I feel like either end up with the Tigers or the Blue Jays. He also mentions Pete Alonso. He says here, Alonso is unlikely to jump the market, especially with the interest of both New York teams currently tied up in Soto. He goes on to mention how Alonso is a power right-handed bat at first base, and they tend not to age very well, but over the past 6 years, only one player has more home runs than Pete Alonso, and that's Aaron Judge. Now, yeah, the Mets, I definitely could see the Mets bringing him back, right? He's a fan favorite there, has a good relationship with Steve Cohen. You do have someone like Mark Vientos who could take over at first base for the long haul. We'll just have to wait and see. I do think it really comes down to Soto at this point. If he ends up going elsewhere, yeah, I think the Mets Mets will put on the full court press. However, I wonder if a team like the Nationals could maybe get involved, right? They could really use some power in their lineup, right? First base, as of right now, you got Juan Yepes, pretty decent year last year, but I think adding someone like Alonso would make a lot of sense, right? A team that's about to enter a competitive window, getting a veteran guy like him with power in the middle of your lineup, I think that could make some sense. They got a lot of payroll flexibility. Up next, he talks about Teoscar Hernandez. He says here, Hernandez's desire for a deal of at least 3 years was only helped by his great division series and World Series performances. The Dodgers are the favorites to bring him back where he thrived in 2024. Boston is in, so is Baltimore, and the Yankees want him if Soto doesn't come back. Now, yeah, going back to the Dodgers, I think makes a lot of sense for Teoscar Hernandez coming off one of the best seasons of his career. Why fix what's not broke? I mean, take a look at the numbers here. 154 games, hit 272, a 339 on base, a 501 slugging, a 134 WRC plus, 33 homers, had a great postseason, won the home run derby. Not a bad year after betting on yourself by taking a one-year deal last offseason. Now, yeah, the Dodgers, yeah, it makes a lot of sense for him to go back here, right? You got an outfield currently of Tommy Edman, Andy Pages, and James Outman. James Outman, just had a clunker of a year, had a great rookie season not too long ago, but he really, fell flat. I also wonder with Teoscar, Passan said that he's looking for at least a 3-year deal. Could he be looking for maybe a 4-year deal? I just wonder, the Dodgers, I think Teoscar would like to go back to the Dodgers, and I think the Dodgers would like to have him back too, but I wonder how many years they're willing to offer Teoscar. A team like the Red Sox, where I think he would be a perfect fit, who they negotiated with last offseason, would the Red Sox be willing to offer him a 4-year deal? That's what I think it comes down to. I think it's going to come down to the years offered. I just wonder how far the Dodgers would be willing to go. I think the Red Sox make a lot of sense. They need a right-handed hitter, and he's always hit well at Fenway Park. He's talked about how much he loves playing at Fenway Park. And the Orioles. I think the Orioles are an interesting fit here. I think really he would split time in the outfield and DH, right? You got an outfield currently of Cedric Mullins, Heston Kjerstad, and Colton Cowser. Now, I think Heston Kjerstad, they're going to be looking to give him some good playing time. High draft pick not too long ago. Colton Cowser out and left. Cedric Mullins is going to be a free agent soon. So really, I think where he probably ends up playing mostly is at DH. You got Ryan O'Hearn slated to be there. So how far will the Orioles be willing to go if they really see him as more as a DH? I think it's going to come down to who's going to offer more years for Teoscar Hernandez. I wonder if the Red Sox would be more motivated in this situation. Up next, he talks about Anthony Santander, and when it comes to Santander, you think of power. 44 home runs this year with a 506 slugging and a 129 WRC plus, but he's not the most well-rounded hitter, only hit 235 this year with a 308 on base. Because of that, I see him getting a contract more so in the 4-year, $80 to $90 million range. I don't think he's going to get one of the biggest contracts out there, but he will definitely bring a lineup some needed power. Now, he goes on to say here, at 30, Santander has been a consistent 2 to 3 win player, and because he brings big power in what's expected to be a sub $100 million price tag due to his low on base percentage, he's drawing interest from lower revenue teams as well as the big boys. Now, when I'm thinking of some lower revenue teams that could use a bat, I'm looking right here at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, I don't know if Bob Nutting is going to come out here and spend, $80-90 million on a player. Doesn't really seem like something he's going to sign off on, but who knows? We've seen crazier things. They could really use a boost in the lineup. When you're taking a look at home runs last year, the Pirates ranked 25th overall. Now, another team I'm looking at are the Cincinnati Reds. They ranked 19th in homers this past year. They could definitely use a bit of a boost in this lineup. I'm looking at a team like the Nationals. We just mentioned Pete Alonso a second ago. Maybe you could slot in Santander somewhere in here. I'm also looking at the Blue Jays. We've talked about them a couple of times here. I mean, he could slot right into left field there. Now, one team I'm very intrigued in are the Angels. As of right now, they got Joe Adell out in right field. I think Santander could give some needed power here. The Angels this past year ranked 22nd in home runs. He talks about Christian Walker next, and Walker's been one of the more solid power hitters in the game over the last few years. Coming off a great year this year where he had a 119 WRC plus, a 468 on the slugging, 26 home runs overall. But going back over the last few years, he ranks very well in home runs, 95 home runs combined over the last 3 seasons with a 481 slugging and a 120 WRC plus. Pretty solid defender at first base as well. Now, Passan goes on to say here, for a Yankees team looking to improve its defense, the 3-time reigning Gold Glove winner would be an ideal fit. Yeah, I think he could be a fit here, but I just wonder, what do you do with DJ LeMahieu. I think at this point, DJ LeMahieu needs to stay at first base. He's been having a lot of injuries, so I don't think you move him off there. I think DH, first base for DJ LeMahieu, or could they just cut ties at this point? You know, DJ hasn't really been at all productive for a while now, so I think Christian Walker could be a good fit here. I also look at a team like the Nationals, mentioned them earlier, Pete Alonso. I think he could be a pretty solid fit here with a team going into a competitive window. I mentioned the Pirates. Again, will they spend the money? I'm not quite sure, but I think the Pirates would be a great fit. He is a Pennsylvania native as well, but Christian Walker, I'm definitely excited to see where he goes. Up next, he talks about Jurickson Profar, and Profar, I think, is one of the more intriguing free agents this offseason. Coming off a career year at 31 years old, almost 32 years old, he was a highly touted prospect a little while ago, but never fully got it going at the major league level. Had a couple of good seasons, but easily a career year for him this year. Hit 280 with a 380 on base, a 459 on the slugging, a 139 WRC plus, 24 home runs, a 4.3 F4 overall, a very good season. But I wonder what the contract is going to look like for Profar. I think because he lacks the track record, I could see maybe a 3-year, $60 million deal. I think that's possible. You know, maybe 4 years, just have to wait and see. But Jeff Passan doesn't say much about Profar. He says here, he hit a career high 24 home runs and is a switch hitter with an 88th percentile strikeout rate. I think he would be a good fit for teams that are looking to reduce the strikeouts. Now, I'm looking at teams like the Mariners. They had a lot of problems with strikeouts last year. You got the Pirates, who I mentioned earlier. You know, they could use another bat as well. Maybe the Rays. I feel like the Rays could be intriguing. Profar, again, I think is very intriguing. Up next, he brings up another interesting free agent this offseason, someone you might be just hearing about for the first time, middle infielder Hye-Seong Kim from the KBO. Now, Kim's been a solid player for a while now, over 8 seasons in the KBO, hitting 304, the 364 on base. Not a lot of power, only a 403 on the slugging, but very fast, 211 stolen bases in his career, over 8 seasons in the KBO. And he's only 26 years old, so I think he's going to be very interesting this offseason. He mentions that here. He's going to be 26 on opening day, has the ability to play either second base or shortstop, steal bases, hit for average, occasionally damage a ball, had 11 home runs this season. Now, when I'm thinking of a team that could use a second baseman, I'm looking at the Seattle Mariners, right? They just got rid of Jorge Polanco. That was a bust of a trade here. You got Dylan Moore projected there, but I think Dylan Moore is more of a bench piece. I would look to the Mariners to be the leading candidate for someone like Hye-Seong Kim. Up next, he talks about Tyler O'Neill, and O'Neill's coming off a great bounce-back season with the Red Sox, hitting 31 homers with a 511 slugging and a 131 WRC+. plus. Still missed a little bit of time. He has been getting bit by the injury bug over the last couple of years, 113 games overall this year, but still a great year. Also hit lefties very well, had an OPS of 1.179 against lefties. That is absolutely stupid. Now, Jeff Passan goes on to say here about O'Neill, the Red Sox would like to bring him back, and he would fit with the Giants and Tigers as well. So I've already talked about O'Neill possibly coming back to the Red Sox. I think Teoscar Hernandez is the guy they should go after. He's been more durable. San Francisco, yeah, I could definitely see the fit here. Out and left, you got Grant McCray projected to be in left, and I think the Giants could use a boost in this offense. With the Tigers in right field, you got Matt Vierling, but Matt Vierling has versatility, so he can move around. However, there's a few other teams I'm going to keep an eye on. I'm going to go to his hometown Blue Jays here. He's originally from Canada. They could definitely use a bat. Yes, they are going to be going after Juan Soto, but I think Tyler O'Neill would also be a good option here. I've already mentioned the Reds. They could use a bat. They could use some power, and they could use an improvement against left-handed pitching as well, so I think you can definitely find a home here. I'll also mention the Angels again. Out and right, you got Joe Adell projected there. You know, Adell sure had 20 home runs this past year, but he only hit 207 with a 280 on base. I think O'Neill would be an upgrade there. Let's talk about Hye-Seong Kim, and unfortunately, his season ended prematurely this year due to a shoulder injury, but he should be good to go in the first couple of months of 2025. I think Kim is one of the more underrated players in the game. He's not going to give you a whole lot with the bat, but he had a league average 101 WRC plus this year. With Kim, you're really looking at a great glove at either second base or shortstop. He'll give you some speed as well, good base running. Now, Passan, he says here, Kim has options. He could sign a high-dollar one-year deal, but the shoulder issue hasn't dissuaded teams from pursuing him for multiple seasons. Now, I think he could stay with the Padres, especially if it's a one-year deal. I could see see that happening. Now, I'm also looking at the Mariners. I mentioned them earlier with Hye-Seong Kim. I think he could be a good fit here as well. I'm also looking at the Dodgers. I wonder if the Dodgers could be an interesting fit here. Now, Mookie, it's looking like he's going to be coming back to the infield, so if he plays short or second, I think you could have Hye-Seong Kim play the other position. I don't know what you do with Gavin Lux at this point, but I think if you had Mookie at second, Hye-Seong Kim at short, I think that's a pretty good up the middle. Moving on to Gleyber Torres, he says here that he's a prime change of scenery candidate after never living up to his early excellence. Now, Gleyber Torres was struggling with the bat this year after a good 2023 season until they moved him to the leadoff spot in the second half. He was very good in the leadoff spot for the Yankees in the second half and in the postseason. I think that's going to help him out this coming offseason. Now, some teams that I think could be a good fit, I've already mentioned the Mariners for second base, and I'll get back to the Dodgers again. If you have Mookie Betts play shortstop, maybe you could slide Gleyber in at second. Gavin Lux maybe could slide to the bench, or maybe you could use him as a trade piece. And another thing to think about with the Dodgers too is they've gotten a lot out of players that are coming off struggling seasons. I'm looking at Teoscar Hernandez most notably. They got a lot more out of his bat this past year. Maybe they could do the same thing with Gleyber Torres. Moving on to Paul Goldschmidt, he says here, between his history and makeup, Goldschmidt will find teams willing to hand him their first base job in hopes of getting a more representative version of him. Now, Goldschmidt is coming off the worst season of his career, hitting .245 with a .302 on base, a .414 slugging, a league average WRC plus of 122 home runs. However, he was a lot better in the second half. In the first half, had a .664 OPS, .799 in the second half. And you still see some Reds here with Goldschmidt ranked in the 92nd percentile when it came to hard hit percentage. So I still think there's some life left in that bat with Goldschmidt. Now, I think the Astros could be a pretty good fit. You got Singleton slated in at first. I think a good veteran guy like Goldschmidt would fit well there. I'll get back to the Pirates. Bob Nutting, can you please spend some money? But they could use some bats. I could definitely see there being a fit here. Now, I talked about Christian Walker earlier with the Nationals along with Pete Alonso. If you strike out on both those guys, maybe a veteran like Paul Goldschmidt could be a good fit here with a lot of young players. He could be a good leader in that clubhouse. But yeah, Paul Goldschmidt, I definitely want to see where he goes this offseason. Moving on to the pitching side of things, and he starts with Roki Sasaki. Now, Roki Sasaki is easily one of the best pitchers in the world at only 23 years old, has amazing velocity, sits in the upper 90s, easily touches 100 miles per hour, holds it late in the games as well, has great stuff, an amazing splitter, great slider, curveball. This guy is going to be the real deal. He's put up great numbers in 4 seasons in Japan. And Jeff Passan points out a few things here. He will cost pennies compared to what he's expected to produce. Now, he's not going to be getting a massive contract like Yoshinobu Yamamoto because he's an amateur free agent, meaning he's going to be subjected to the international bonus pool. So he's basically going to be getting a cheaper deal. He's going to be a minor leaguer when he signs, and then a team will just promote him to the major league level. Now, with Roki Sasaki, because he's going to be subjected to the international bonus pool, this really gives all 30 teams a chance to go after him. Now, if he's posted after December 15th, which is when the international bonus pool money resets for all 30 teams, then yeah, I see all 30 teams trying to get involved here. Why wouldn't they, especially when he's going to be so cheap? Now, a lot of people think he's going to be going to the Dodgers, right? Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers make a lot of sense. Obviously, they got Ohtani, they got Yamamoto, just won a World Series, great player development. You're in LA, good marketing, especially when he's going to be making a cheaper deal. I mean, yeah, absolutely, he can make some money off the field as well. Now, I want to point out here, Jim Allen on Twitter put this out there the other day. The Dodgers are not a lock to sign Roki Sasaki. Now, Jim Allen, who is this, you might be asking? He's a writer and former baseball columnist for the Daily Yomiuri. Seems like he has an idea of what's going on over in Japan when it comes to the baseball side of things. He says here, he will go where he thinks it is in his best short-term and long-term interest to go. A source close to Sasaki said a small market team with a solid development setup and plan could be the best destination. Still, the Dodgers are going to be the favorite. We can all agree on that. You're going to have some other big market teams that'll try to jump in, like the Red Sox, like the Yankees, like the Cubs as well. They've also had some pretty good pitching development over the last few years. You also got Shota Imanaga there. I'm also going to be looking at a team like the Padres. AJ Preller has been hot on his tail for a long time now. He has even mentioned him at a Padres event. So yeah, I think AJ Preller is going to be very aggressive for him. You also got Yu Darvish there. Darvish and Sasaki are pretty close. Darvish could be a great mentor for Sasaki. I think that could be a great fit. Now, if you're looking at some small market teams, I'm looking at the Tigers, right? The Tigers have had great pitching development over the last couple of years. One of the top pitching prospects in baseball. baseball, Jackson Jobe. They've done a great job developing him. And even a team like the Rays, they have developed pitching so good. Even looking at the Rays' projected rotation for 25, you got Shane McClanahan, Taj Bradley, both homegrown guys. You got Ryan Pepio back for Tyler Glasnow. He had a good first season in Tampa. Also, Tyler Glasnow, he's a good example as well. They developed him well. Yeah, he had all the injuries, but he was very good for them. So I could even see the Rays being a bit of a shocker that could maybe end up with Roki Sasaki. Yeah, I know, everyone's saying he's going to end up with the Dodgers, but, I like to keep an open mind. I don't mind going against the grain. So, yeah, I think the Dodgers are going to be the favorite to land him, but I wouldn't count out some of these other teams as well. Moving on to the pitcher that's going to get paid the most this offseason, Corbin Burnes. Now, he says here he can anchor the Giants rotation alongside Logan Webb or add to an already strong quartet of Blue Jay starters with Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, Chris Bassett, and Bowden Francis. He also says here, don't forget about the Orioles either. They are intent on filling out the rotation this winter, and new owner David Rubenstein is ready to spend. Now, starting off with the Giants, yeah, I could definitely see a fit here with the Giants. That would be a very good-looking rotation with Corbin Burnes, Logan Webb, and Robbie Ray, but I've seen reports recently that the Giants might be looking to cut a little bit of payroll, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. That rotation would look very good. Now, I feel like I've mentioned the Blue Jays already like 200 times in this video, but yeah, this would be a good fit here too. Corbin Burnes, Kevin Gausman, that would be a great looking rotation, but I'm still going to look heavily at the Baltimore Orioles. They definitely need to bring Corbin Burnes back, in my opinion, especially with new ownership. They're in the competitive window now. Why would you not bring back Corbin Burnes? You got like nothing on this payroll. Really, the highest paid guy is Zach Eflin at this point. You should bring back Corbin Burnes, sign him up for a long-term deal. To me, I think if you keep that 1 through 3 of Burnes, Eflin, and G-Rod, I think that's very solid. Now, I'm also going to look at the New York Mets. I'm surprised he didn't mention the New York Mets here. Yeah, their big target's Juan Soto, but why not Corbin Burnes as well? Has the connection with David Stearns from the Brewers. They're losing a lot of pitching to free agency this offseason. Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana. I think Burnes and Senga would be very good atop this rotation. But yeah, Corbin Burnes, he's going to be getting paid a lot of money this offseason. Moving on to Max Fried, and he says here he's exactly the sort of pitcher the Red Sox would like to anchor their rotation as their ascent back to contention begins. Toronto is in, San Francisco and Baltimore will be part of the mix too, and don't forget the Dodgers, who are targeting at least one high-end starter. Now, yeah, Max Fried, he's been very solid over the years, helped the Braves win a World Series in 2021, had a bit of an injury bug in 23, but he was very good this year. 174 and a third innings pitched, ERA at a 3.25, FIP at a 3.33. Now, I agree. I think it would be a great fit for the Red Sox. They got a lot out of this rotation this year. The rotation was a huge question mark coming into 2024, but they completely overhauled the pitching department within the organization. You brought in Andrew Bailey to be the pitching coach, and he got a lot out of these guys. Breakout year from Tanner Houck. Brian Bayo, Cutter Crawford, they did show some good things, but they had some bumps along the way. I feel like the floor with the rotation is good, but I feel like they need to get more of a ceiling here. I think Fried and Houck atop the rotation would be a solid 1-2 punch, and I think they also just need to add a lefty to this rotation. Now, the Orioles, I think we just mentioned Corbin Burnes. I think he's going to be a priority for them, but if he ends up going elsewhere, I could see them turning their attention to Fried. Now, the Giants I could find interesting, right? We just talked about them with Corbin Burnes. He would be cheaper than Corbin Burnes. I think Burnes is going to end up getting around $32 million, something around that. Max Fried, I think, is going to be more around the $25 million per year mark, but yeah, he would be a good fit here with the Giants. Again, though, getting back to, the cutting the payroll thing. How much payroll are they looking to cut? Are they looking to add a big contract like this? I don't know. Now, the Dodgers, I could definitely see the Dodgers being a favorite here, right? Obviously, they got a lot of money. And Max Fried, remember, same thing with the Giants. He is from the West Coast, and there have been some rumors out there that maybe he would like to go back to the West Coast. And Passan said here they are looking to add one high-end starter. I just wonder how far are they willing to go when it comes to adding more pitching to the payroll, right? Especially that level of a contract. You just committed over $1 billion to Ohtani and Yamamoto this past year, right? Glasnow you gave a big extension to last offseason. You also got a lot of guys coming back. Tony Gonsolin, Bobby Miller. I would think that they would like to try and get him back on track for next year. Dustin May, Emmett Sheehan, you got Landon Knack there. So they have a lot of guys. Are they going to be giving something around $150 million to Max Fried as well? And that just sounds bonkers. But hey, if if they got the money and they want to do it, I definitely think they could. Moving on to Blake Snell, and I find Snell to be very intriguing this offseason. Now, Passan says here his market will be better this winter than last, and I agree. I don't think he's going to be holding out deep into spring training like he did last offseason. I think he learned his lesson from that after the bad first half, had a great second half this year, but I think Blake Snell, the fact that he's going to be turning 32 years old, I don't see him getting a long-term deal, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't see that for him. I could see a 4, 5-year deal tops, and I definitely think teams will be interested in that. Now, I'll mention the Red Sox again. If they don't land, Max Fried in free agency, or if they don't land Garrett Crochet, I could see Snell being a fallback option. If the Orioles don't bring back Corbin Burnes or get Max Fried, I can definitely see Blake Snell as well. The Mets, they lost a lot of pitching to free agency. I mentioned that earlier. You lost Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, Sean Manaea. I could see Snell being an option there. Maybe the Dodgers, right? We just talked about how they're looking to add a high-end guy. Maybe Blake Snell could be that guy. I'll also look at the Angels, right? Perry Managian, he was on foul territory recently, and he said they need to pitch. And hey, if they could maybe throw some money at Snell and it wouldn't be a long-term deal, I could see that happening, right? Artie Moreno hasn't really been a guy that wants to give out long-term contracts for big money for pitchers, but maybe this could be a little different. Maybe a 4-year deal for Blake Snell. I could see something like that. Moving on to Jack Flaherty, and the first thing he says here is there's a chance Flaherty does not reach $100 million, and I could see this being true because he lacks the track record. 2019 had a good season with the Cardinals, but after that he had a lot of injuries. He was up and down at 23 when he finally got healthy, and this year, yes, he was very good with the Tigers and the Dodgers, but I think teams are going to be hesitant to give him a long-term deal for big money because of the injuries and the track record prior to this year. Now, he goes on to say here, if the Nationals decide to spend on an anchor for their rotation, Flaherty could make sense. He also says here, the Yankees, who killed a deal for Flaherty at the trade deadline out of concerns about his back, could be in again. Now, I just mentioned the Nationals with Blake Snell. Yeah, I think Flaherty could be a fit here alongside Mackenzie Gore at the top of the rotation. The Yankees, I mean, you've had a rotation of Cole, Rodon, and Flaherty. I definitely think that would be very good, but I wonder if the Yankees would really want to pursue him after they saw the medicals. Now, I think the Red Sox, they're going to be looking to add pitching to the rotation. I would prefer them to add a lefty here. And honestly, I'll mention the Angels again. Getting back to what I said about Artie Moreno not wanting to give out, big contracts for pitchers. If Flaherty is going to be more of a short-term deal, it might cost you a few bucks. I could see Moreno getting on board with that, especially if they're looking to improve the rotation. Moving on to Sean Manaea, and he says here his market is bountiful and landing a 4-year deal in the $20 million a year range looks likely. The Mets are hoping for a return engagement. I think it makes a lot of sense to go back to the Mets. Why fix what's not broke? He just had a great year, one of the best years of his career. They worked with him to improve his mechanics, kind of worked with his pitch mix a little bit. They got a great year out of him. I say bring him back on a 4-year deal. I think that makes a ton of sense. Now, I'll also bring up the Dodgers here, right? We just talked about earlier how they wanted to add a starter. I think, honestly, they should look to add some innings to this rotation. A guy that you can depend on. You got a lot of question marks with the health, right? Shohei Ohtani, what's the arm going to be looking like this coming year? Tyler Glasnow always has question marks. Tony Gonsolin's coming back. Dustin May, he's had some injuries in the past couple of years. So I think someone dependable like Manaea could make a lot of sense for the Dodgers. We'll talk about the Blue Jays yet again. I feel like I'm going to talk about the Blue Jays the entire video here, but if they wanted to add some more innings to this rotation, a lefty as well, I think that could make some sense. Also look at the Cleveland Guardians, right? They struggled with their starting pitching. Now I don't see them going after, Corbin Burnes or Max Fried, but maybe that happy medium, a guy that could be, 4-year, 70 to 80 million. I could maybe see the Guardians doing that. I find that probably unlikely, but if they wanted to add some reliable innings to this rotation, a rotation that struggled last year, I could maybe see it. On to Yusei Kikuchi, and he says he's awfully popular. He also says here the Astros want him back, and other teams expected to operate in the mid-tier pitching market, the Cubs, Dodgers, Angels, and if they whiff on the bigger names, the Blue Jays and the Orioles. I mean, I definitely think Kikuchi just needs to stay with the Astros. Had a great second half with them. It doesn't hurt to keep a guy like that in the rotation, in the middle of the rotation. But I do think he's going to have a lot of interest out there because he's 33 years old. He's not going to be requiring, a long-term deal, a 3-year 3-year deal. That sounds about right for Yusei Kikuchi. I definitely think the Astros should just hang on to him. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some teams out there looking for him. I just mentioned the Dodgers looking to, I think, maybe they could add some dependable innings there. Kikuchi has been a dependable guy, and hey, another guy from Japan. That could make some sense. I'm also looking at maybe a team like the Mets, who I've also mentioned, right, losing a lot of pitching to free agency. And hey, him and Kadai Senga in the rotation, that'd be pretty fun too. On to Nick Pivetta, and he says here he almost certainly won't accept a qualifying offer to return to Boston. At least a 3-year deal awaits Pivetta in free agency. Teams believe his stuff plays like a frontline starter, and whether it's the Cubs, Orioles, Braves, or others, Pivetta is looking at one of the biggest deals of the winter for a starter. And I agree. I think Nick Pivetta gets looked over a bit, and that's not Giraffe Nick Robbie talking, but Pivetta has been very steady over the last few years. This year, solid season, 27 games, 26 starts, ERA at a 4.14, FIP at a 4.07, over 10 strikeouts per 9 this year. Pivetta is a very solid guy to have in your rotation. And going back to 2021, he actually ranks 23rd in innings pitched among all qualified starters. He's a guy that's going to take the ball every 5th day. Also, when it comes to stuff plus, going back to 2021, he ranks 16th overall. Nick Pivetta, I think, gets very overlooked. I think he's going to have a much bigger market than people expect. Moving on to Walker Buehler and Shane Bieber. He says here about Buehler that he showed during the postseason that he still has frontline ability, and without a qualifying offer to drag down his market, he's in line to get a big money 1-year contract from a contender, even after a disappointing regular season. And I agree. I think he's going to get himself a nice 1-year deal, a prove it kind of a deal. The last couple of years have not gone well for him. He had to get Tommy John, so he's definitely looking to prove something in 2025, but he does have a good track record. He's had a lot of success going back to his early years when he first came up. But with Buehler, I wonder if he's going to go back to the Dodgers or not. Now, there was some weirdness going on with the Dodgers this year. He left them at one point to pursue other options with his rehab. He ended up going to the Eric Cressey Sports Performance Group. So, I don't know. There seems to be a bit of iffiness going on there. So, I wonder if you see him back with the Dodgers or with another team this offseason. Now, for Bieber, he says here that he underwent Tommy John in early April and is expected to return relatively early in 25. He could take a 1-year deal and hit the market at 30, or lock in a strong guarantee over 2 years. I could see a 2-year deal. I think more likely you could see a year and an option. I could see him just going back to the Guardians. He's been doing his rehab with them, so I could end up seeing him, just sticking around for another year, go back out to the market next year. But who knows? Teams looking for pitching, especially with someone that has the track record of him. He's shown he could be a top of the rotation guy. I wouldn't be surprised at all if a team comes after him with a good money offer and ends up pitching elsewhere. Moving on to some of the top relievers on the market: Tanner Scott, Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Esteves, and Clay Holmes. He thinks Scott, Hoffman, and Holmes are going to get 3 years, but he also says that Tanner Scott could get a 4th year, and I could definitely see him getting a 4-year deal. He's one of the top relievers in baseball for a couple of years now. He could either close or be a great setup option for you. I definitely think Scott is going to get a nice payday. Now, Jeff Hoffman, we've been seeing a couple of reports that maybe teams could be looking to him as a starter, kind of like what the Giants did with Jordan Hicks. So I could see that being a possibility because he has a 4-pitch mix, used to be a starter. He has been a great reliever recently, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Hoffman get a Jordan Hicks kind of a contract. Esteves, I think he's going to end up getting a 2-year deal. I think he'll either be a closer or a good setup guy somewhere. Clay Holmes, yeah, he blew a lot of saves this year, but this is a guy that still has great stuff, put up great numbers this year, gets a lot of ground balls. I could see him going to a team with a good infield defense. Either way, he's going to be a solid option at the back end of a bullpen. Moving on to the trade market, and he starts off with Garrett Crochet. He says he's the prize of the winter trade market. Crochet is almost certainly going to be dealt by the White Sox this winter. He goes on to say here, Tommy John surgery kept Crochet out of all of 22 and most of 23, and though teams might be inclined to give up more in a deal if they know they can lock up the lefty, his medical records will be scrutinized by any team looking to acquire him, similar to Tyler Glasnow last offseason. Now, he mentions the Phillies, the Mets, the Dodgers, Red Sox, and the Orioles. Why wouldn't they be interested? Garrett Crochet just had a great breakout season in his first year as a starter. 32 starts, FIP at a 2.69, a great strikeout to walk ratio, good velocity, good stuff. Garrett Crochet is going to be a great addition for any rotation out there. I've already talked about the Red Sox when it comes to the pitching. I think he makes a lot of sense for them. Now, the White Sox are going to be looking for position players in trades. Chris Getz has already talked about this with Bruce Levine of 670 The Score. Yeah, the Red Sox, they got a lot of position players they can deal. You got prospects at the top of the farm, including Roman Anthony. I don't think they're going to trade him. Maybe Marcelo Meyer. You got Christian Campbell there, who had an amazing season in the minor leagues this year. You got Kyle Teal. You also got Willy Abreu, who's coming off a solid rookie season, 5 years of control left before he hits free agency. I could definitely see the Red Sox getting a deal done. The Mets, I've already talked about how much they need pitching after losing a lot of it to free agency. They got some good position players at the top of their organization, including someone like Jet Williams. The Orioles, they definitely need to add something, in my opinion. I've talked about them as well. They got some good position players in that system. We'll see if they can work out a deal. Now, the Dodgers were talking with the White Sox about Crochet at the deadline. I guess the Dodgers didn't want to part with Dalton Rushing. Maybe they could do something this time. Maybe you could do something with Jose DePaula possibly. Now, the Phillies, you know, Dave Dombrowski, he is always going to be looking to make deals. They're looking to upgrade after falling short in the postseason this year. They got some good position players in their system. You got Aiden Miller. You got Justin Crawford. I could definitely see the Phillies trying to make a play here. But yeah, Garrett Crochet, I agree with Jeff Passan. He is definitely the treasure of this year's trade market. He talks about Devin Williams and Ryan Helsley next, saying that one GM recently made an important point as Milwaukee considers moving Williams and St. Louis ponders Helsley a year before each reaches free agency. He says here, shouldn't both teams hold on to their relievers and cash in at the deadline when contenders are willing to give up more talent? Now, I think you can look at both sides here. If you traded for them now, you would have one full season of control with either of them, or if you wait till the deadline, I mean, yeah, teams we saw at this past year's deadline, teams were willing to give up quite a bit. I mean, the cost of some of these guys out there at the deadline was just ridiculous, but I think either way, you'd be able to get a good return on both. Ryan Helsley led the majors in saves this year, throws around 100 miles per hour on average, had a great season this year, ERA at a 2.04. Now, Devin Williams missed a lot of time this year with a back injury, also had the bad outing against the Mets, but Devin Williams has had some of the best stuff in Major League Baseball for a while now. Also put up great numbers in a very small sample this year, 22 games, ERA at a 1.25, FIP at a 2.06, very high strikeout rate. Yeah, he does give up some walks, but the guy's stuff is off the charts. Now, either way, I could see both of them staying, but I could also see both of them getting moved too. He also talks about Sonny Gray and Luis Castillo and how both have no trade clauses. Now, reportedly, Sonny Gray doesn't really want to waive his no trade clause, according to Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, but you never know. Maybe the Cardinals get an offer. Maybe they go back to Sonny Gray and say, hey, we got this on the table. Are you sure you don't want to waive it? Maybe he'll change his mind. Now, Luis Castillo, he's on a pretty decent contract. As of right now, teams are always looking to add pitching. The Mariners could use some more bats, so maybe a team can come forward with a major league ready bat. Maybe you could do a bit of a swap there. Now, Nico Horner, he brings him up as a trade possibility. Now, he just had to get elbow surgery, so I see him staying with the Cubs, but I could also see a situation too if a team feels okay about his elbow surgery moving forward. I mean, you're getting a guy that, you know, gets on base for you. He's fast. He plays good defense out there, because the Cubs, they already got, you know, a couple of guys down in the minors. Matt Shaw, he's been playing great ever since he got drafted. He brings up Alec Boehm as well. Now, the Phillies, they're going to be intriguing this offseason. They need I think they need to kind of mix some things up here, you know, after falling short of the postseason. I think they need to get creative. I don't think they need to go out there and sign stars like Juan Soto. I think they just need to maybe tinker with the team a little bit. Maybe Alec Boehm can be used as a trade piece. He has decent value coming off a decent season. Maybe you could use him, he's going to be coming up on free agency here soon, so maybe you could use him as a trade piece to help improve other areas of the team. I just said a second ago that Sonny Gray reportedly doesn't want to waive his no trade clause, but Nolan Arenado could be game, and I could see the Cardinals really wanting to move on from the last few years of that deal. Now, Nolan Arenado's bat has regressed a little bit over the last few years, but he's still one of the premier defenders in Major League Baseball. Maybe they can move him to a team where they could help him out with the bat and maybe a bit more of a hitter-friendly park. He is a pull bat, so maybe a team like the Astros, if they don't bring back Bregman, maybe the Red Sox, you got the monster there. If they want to move Devers to more of a DH role, Cardinals, they will have to eat quite a bit of that salary. Now, you know, you got Josh Naylor on the Cardinals. He's going to be coming up on free agency soon. He's a guy that could definitely help improve a lot of teams' lineups out there. Maybe the Guardians feel like they want to get ahead of the value here and try to cash in on it while they still can. Jordan Montgomery is really interesting, right? The owner came out, the owner of the D-backs came out recently and said basically it was a mistake signing this guy and he regretted it. So he did exercise his player option, but I wonder if the D-backs want to just move on. You know, maybe they could take back a bad contract. I've come up with the idea of maybe you could take back Masataka Yoshida Yoshida, the Red Sox, you know, they're looking to add some pitching, trying to talk with them last offseason, so maybe they can bring Montgomery in. They can get a bounce-back season out of him. Jeff Passan with a pretty solid offseason preview. Let me know your thoughts. We talked about a lot in this video. Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. But everyone, that's all I got for this video. If you can on the way out, hit that like button for me, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.